Okay, welcome again to this session. The first session was actually quickly introducing the philosophy of why we're doing what we're doing, but this one is going into a bit more detail to talk about the corporate academic model situated within a vision, a global vision that is driving everything we're doing. I think it's important to look at that vision and the way presented. We want to live a spirit-led, project-based life, transforming and democratizing global education and change. Democratizing means making it affordable enough to people in the world, especially developing countries, because the aim of all this is not about making money, so to speak, but about cascading a new way of doing stuff in education to be able to equip people with the skills to survive and to make contributions to society. So it's about also upskilling global citizens, teams, organizations, countries, and continents, creating innovative products, services, digital firms, wealth, jobs, enhancing the peace, prosperity, joy, and happiness of individuals and countries, especially Nigeria, Africa, and developing countries of the global south, and publishing the ideas through multimedia channels across the quadruple helix. Is actually those four things we talked about at the beginning: academia, industry, government departments, and wider society. I want to acknowledge the fact that this particular talk that I'm giving was a joint talk we presented at Enugu, the Federal College of Dental Technology, as well as Oko Polytechnic last year, I think either 2021 or something like that. And that was about training the next generation of academics, students, and professionals for accelerated socioeconomic development. That was done by myself and Professor Godfrey Eldor, who is also here with us. But all of us are working towards this vision, as I talked about. However, what does it mean to do this? The question I'm asking today, or we are trying to explore, is how many traditional academics today do all this, or do most of them, in Nigeria, in Africa, developing countries, even some, in some cases, developed countries. I don't think many do. And that is why we are still a developing country after 62 years of independence. And it's quite a very, very scary proposition to remain that underdeveloped for that length of time, given the number of high institutions we have. 220 universities currently approved by the NUC. More than 60 polytechnics are approved by the MBTE, the National Board for Technical Education. All of these institutions have academics writing papers. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, those papers are just read by themselves and their colleagues. So it's self-service and not national service, if we want to be slightly arrogant about it. So the game is to change this so we can start doing all these things. The advantage is not only that people in society benefit, but we benefit. Because if we are creating products and services from our knowledge, we're also making some earnings from it to subsidize whatever is being paid us statutorily in our normal main work we are doing. We can even earn that money within a department, within what is called the Centers for Application of Every Discipline, or what we call research and consulting units. So we can make the money formally in the institution. And of course, we give stipends to those who bring in the ideas, the rainmakers. The problem is that not too many of us are rainmakers. We also talked about what is this vision about? Why this vision? We simply want to challenge the status quo, isn't it? As we said. So we need to radically innovate curricula, isn't it? And make them accessible to all learners and knowledge workers. And then how do we do it? We have to live a disciplined, spirit-filled, and project-based life to achieve this. So our lives are not just about teaching students in the class. It's about doing a lot of projects. Okay, because if you do many projects, you have a portfolio of skills you can talk about, and you get more opportunities. The other thing is that also, what is it are we supposed to do really? We need to consistently upskill ourselves, global citizens, teams, organizations, countries, to create offerings that people need. That's where user research comes in. How do we even understand what people need? Do we have the training to know how to do user research, for instance, which is one of the 5 forces that we're talking about today? Because it's not as simple as that. A simple example is if I want to teach first-year students their needs as early learners are not the same as the needs of final year students or master students. So do I actually understand the differences between these needs in order to position my lecture notes and my case studies and every other material I'm using appropriately to their needs, to minimize their pain points and enhance their understanding of the subject matter? These are the issues that are eluding us most of the time in these climes, and so on and so forth. And we need to be able to publish in a broader way, not publishing only in order to get promoted, and then we're talking to ourselves. We need to publish and disseminate, our ideas more widely, even through multimedia, through TVs, through, films. How many academies are doing that? Last time I checked, it's the Pentecostal priests that are doing that more than we do. And we need to learn that game from them. Okay. We then talk about the new paradigm itself is called the corporate, academic, research, and enterprise development system. The RIAT there talks about research, integration of knowledge, applications, and teaching. The SSGS itself is the platform we use to disseminate these ideas, and it's called the Skills for Students, Graduates, and Startups Academy. But the philosophy is that every single thing, or most of the things you do in the RIAT, which is what we do to be paid salaries in universities and polytechnics, must be geared to producing something. And that is research and enterprise development, to create things, to create all those offerings, to create firms that can employ our students as well. And this, we now talk about the 5 forces, okay? The 5 forces that I'm talking about today in the Cure Helix. Remember, the Cure Helix is academia, government, industry, wider society. It's a concatenation of systems that we selected to be robust enough to carry this vision, to be able to enable academies to add value in a more fulfilling way and in more impactful ways. So we'll talk about that 5 forces quickly. You can see those 5 forces here. The first one is our philosophy that is already taken care of. But second one is important because we need to think about integral excellence, that is total excellence, in those 4 areas, the RIAT things. Recently in our articles, I call it the RIAT ensemble, that is assemblage of those things. But I need to make a remark quickly that yes, we might be doing the research within our fields and professing them, that's good enough. But where we fall on our swords are the 2 middle guys there, the 2 middle entities, integration of knowledge and application. We're not good in that. Because if you can't integrate knowledge, you cannot even begin to make sense of challenging problems in society. Because most problems that are big come in as if they are elephants. And you cannot see all the dimensions of an elephant looking from one side, isn't it? So you need complementarity of disciplines to be able to bracket a problem. And that is where we need to develop a lot of facilities. The integration of knowledge is called I of K. As a fond name, you remember I of T, Internet of Things. This is I of K. I posit that I of K is the most powerful idea for developing societies, even more than I of T. I of T serves just the computer scientists that are trying to put something, allowing a freak to talk to. It's self-serving. But I of K is how to bring disciplines together, not to be expert in all of them, but bring people together and work on a problem, and everybody is contributing perspectives and getting things done better. So I think that's the kind of thing we need to be able to do. So that's the 5 forces for you. Then also the curriculum has to relentlessly innovate, all the RIAT scholarships, and that is what we are doing through the SSGs. We need a world-class incubator, a career incubator, that is a kind of a business model integrated that can enable those things to be catalyzed. And then that is the 4th force. And then, of course, there should be complementary training in user research, user-centered design, just as I've taught. That completes the 5 forces. And with that complete 5 forces, we talk about the current state of education. I've already summarized that as it's not good enough because the current state of education is fairly dysfunctional, and that's why we remain underdeveloped or undeveloped for a long time. And the problem is that we have to change this game. We cannot build companies, okay, how many companies like Google, Microsoft, SpaceX, Amazon are actually in Africa, in Nigeria, or in developing countries? Not many. And that's where the problem lies. We need to learn the tricks of how to build those things. So a new model of education is just what you're talking about. The corporate academic model, which we now call global corporate academicism. That's what we call it now. Of course, I don't want to belabor this. The reason is that every single week, by the special grace of God, we release authority articles on social media. Therefore, and I sent to you before this event a couple of those publications for you to go through. I don't think it's fair to call them pre-readings now because of the time they came to you. But of course, you continue to read them after this. An authority post is not actually conveying that we are proud. No, it's a technical language in social media communication. I will explain that it's simply a structure of communicating that has images to be able to draw the attention of people, has enough evidence and numbers to elucidate a problem. Like I was quoting the number of universities in Nigeria, polytechnics, publications that are not doing anything real for us. So that kind of thing is numbers. And then of course it has to have a cohesive argument. And that is what is called an authority post. It's a technical language. I just want to quickly step through some building blocks. So we are talking about quadruple helix, bringing academia, industry, government, and wider society together. That is the game that we need to play. I keep appreciating Professor Odo for putting these type of things together before we had that talk. So that's again what we're doing. Industry, different kinds of industry sectors, construction, automobiles and parts, banking and finance, investment companies, construction and property, down the line. So many, 19 of them are there. If academics can ask themselves, which of these industries can my field impact? Which of the elements of the quadruple helix, academia, industry, government, can my discipline impact? Then we'll be able to start making more progress. We're not asking those questions. We're just saying, what number of publications have we got in Scopus Journal, this and that, for us to become a promoter? Who is even telling you that you have to be ranked that way? There's a better ranking we've developed. So why are we going to be slaves to that kind of system? A system that impoverishes our country is not a good system. So that's what we're trying to talk about. I think we've covered a lot. And then the philosophy is covered. The model. The model is what I told at the beginning, and unfortunately many people are not here, is that there are 3 areas you need to develop in order to be a global corporate academic. You need to understand, you have a main field, statistics, real estate, entrepreneurship, digital, anything, digital economy, marketing, computer science, electronic engineering, your field, primary research domain. But you need to know where to apply these things across the global helix, and also in order to reach out, in order to achieve some of the things in the Oselux vision. That connection is what you need to do. And then, of course, you need to engage in extremely wide readings, pervasive wide reading, devouring literature across fields. That is called the general cultural literacy. What we are doing today is CPD. CPD is just, being current in your own area, being current in just the PRD. GCL is, reading up everything, digesting literature voraciously in order to be able to connect knowledge. That's very important. And so on and so forth. We've talked about the riot. Of course, there's no issue. I just wanted to point to the word I of K. Nothing more. There's nothing else to say there because we talked about it. And of course, other things are there. I'm going to send you the slides as part of the continuing, support. Send the slides because slides are very detailed. You can read them and make sense of them. But what was the incubator? The incubator is a business model integrated that is built through PhD tech research I supervised in 2019 for building digital platforms, hybrid platforms that can deliver the Oselux vision. So everybody that has a PhD tech already has a company together with a PhD thesis. Most of the digital platforms I built came from my PhD tech supervised. And this research student become the CEO, I become the executive chairman. That's how business is done with knowledge. Okay. You're going to have to come out of the classroom to do these games. Empower yourselves and, of course, empower society. I think that is really what I need to say about this. I've been warned by my chairman that I don't need to go into too much detail sometimes, because there are other times. So this will still be used because there are other things we're going to do here, like the Research Methods Canvas has a different section when we talk about publishing, doing advanced research. That's where I'm going to talk about this. I'm not going to belabor this one so much, because the time for this is now almost through, but I've covered what I wanted to cover, because it is the 5 forces that is the next, what we're doing now in our plan is the 5 forces. But let me talk about 7 E's. The 7 E's involve bringing together a set of E's that can give us the best training in entrepreneurship ever. Reason, because it's not done anywhere. Your discipline, which is your expertise, is there. Experience of all you've been doing, how to corner it into products and services, how to use it to inform what you're doing. Entrepreneurship, enterprise development, employability, emotional intelligence, and execution. And execution is about project management, program management, agile Scrum delivery, you know what I mean, management science, and all those other things you need to be able to, even strategy, in order to do things properly. So that is 7 E's. We run a separate kind of 7 E training where also we bring in a lot of skills called the different laws of success, 15 laws of success, all in this slide, 16 hallmarks of success, not in this slide, but related. 32 habits of highly creative people in this slide, for instance. 5 minds to the future, posited by Gardner in 2005. The synthesizing mind, the creating mind, the responsible mind, the ethical mind, and the creative mind. Imagine training people to have all this. You are training rainmakers, guys that can change society very rapidly, and we call them spirit beings. Spirit beings, that's what we call them. We don't have those guys. Otherwise, why are we where we are? And that is exactly what I really want us to share about these things. There are other things we can take on from this slide later on, but I'm trying to move fast, because in the game, where you really want me to come in this, is this canvas, which leads to how do we publish better papers that can do all these things and still do more than the traditional thing we're required to get promoted, so that we can eat our cake and have it. Okay? Any questions so far? Any contributions? We have about a few minutes left. I think we have a section that is for interaction, isn't it? After each section, there is 15 minutes for us to talk about this. How do we link our disciplines? How do we take advantage of it? We need to do that, sometimes through chats, please, or you can also send off notes, a lot of notes later on, asking questions about how you can use these things in your discipline. You see that I reply those notes almost instantly, because that is my interest. We have just less than 1 minute to finish this bit. Is there any remark? That will be when we come into the interactive session. But this is the 5 forces that I'm talking about, but I have to situate it within a wider context of the vision of what we are pursuing, the different things that link up with it. And it's not a game we learn overnight, because this has happened over 20 years. But we need to follow you up once we finish and get you registered. Okay, thank you very much for coming to this interactive section after the 5 forces were introduced. What we're trying to do in the interactive section is to try to begin now to apply the constructs we learned so far to our own various disciplines. I can hazard a few examples, for instance, as a kind of plenary. One of it is, how do you get a mathematician, for instance, to apply these constructs? All that the mathematician needs to do is to say to myself, if I'm trained in differential equations, what are the applications of differential equations in real life? Do I realize that differential equations actually are used to plan the trajectory of a rocket to Mars? You see what I mean? Thank you very much. So if we do not tell students, or if we do not tell ourselves that this little thing we are playing with, enjoying it, in terms of the joy of manipulating numbers, doing the epsilons and deltas, that all these things are used practically to design and to build even airplanes. Because the motion of an airplane amid thrusts of wind at terrific velocity is governed by differential equations and other equations from mathematical physics, heat equations, showed in the equation. A lot of them. Schrodinger equations, for instance. If there is random variation around those equations, you just toss an epsilon at the end of it, it becomes a stochastic function, a stochastic system. But the core of it, the signal, is actually a mathematical function. But if you don't tell mathematicians this, how do they apply those knowledge? That's the problem we have. Okay? And other aspects of mathematics. If you go to history recently, how do we get historians to impact the Kerr helix? History alone may not do it, okay, because the history is what happened in the past, but how do we learn from it? A little bit of sociology, a little bit of politics to come in, conflict resolutions, things like that. But the capacity and the thinking that about these applications has to happen within departments. And that is why every single department, professional or not professional, must have a center for the application of that discipline. And in that center, everybody must learn the 5 forces and the 7Es, because those are the two main pillars that support knowledge production of the kind we're talking about. And even the teaching that is going on, how do we do the teaching in the best way? Current way we teach now is about, okay, we start with the teaching instead of doing it last. So we come and say to students, oh, this is a concept we will learn. At the end of this, we'll be able to do this. Fair enough, you can tell them that. But the problem is, which problem are they solving to enable them to understand what we're talking about? If you do that kind of classroom teaching to the likes of Bill Gates, Elon Musk, the Goldman Sachs rainmakers, these investment banks are raking a lot of funds into the investment banks. You lose them because these are guys that are tactile, they're kinesthetic, they don't learn by being told all those stories. You put a problem before them, just like software engineers. So the system for teaching, therefore, is to reverse back, do all these things first, and then do the teaching at the end by bringing it together. So the teaching is only about 10% of the 60 minutes that you spend with students. And that is called reverse pedagogy. It's in one of the documents I gave you. Reverse pedagogy. It's a new system. It's not really new. Nothing is really new completely, but it's fairly new because of the fact that it has a proper way of being done and it has to be taught in those centers. That is why we are today helping universities to have those kind of centers in order to catalyze the impact of what everybody is doing, academics, students, professionals, policymakers, and things like that. And that is nearly bringing us to this session. However, please, session may not be very long. What you need to do is, as your mind leads you to ask questions about what we're saying today, send those questions to us about your own discipline, and we can work with you. Well, we don't know everything, but we know the system very well to begin to think of examples. I've only managed to pick a few disciplines, to be honest about it, right? But there are a lot of case studies we have anyway. So just try to ask yourself, oh, can I do this? You don't have to be perfect in it at the beginning. Just try to open your mindset about, oh, these are possibilities, And we have copious articles written on them. I only sent you a few. We have about another 30 or so. Ijoma can confess about that, but it's not everything I need to send. I'm just selecting the ones. Sometimes I even make mistakes. I may put the wrong ones sometimes. Anyway, but I'm happy that at least we're engaging and realizing that for knowledge to help our country, our continent, and to help the world, we're going to have to do things differently, okay? And so on and so forth. So that is exactly what I have in mind for this interactive session. No matter how short it is, it's just to provoke us to take interest in this thing. The beauty of this is that we're actually not jettisoning what we know in the traditional system. No, that is still important. We'll see how to do those things, but we're saying we have to go way beyond that. And you'll see the reasons for that when we go to the next session on restart methods canvas, or when it comes on. And you will begin to see the difference between the way we're doing stuff and the way it has been done all along. Thank you so much, because I think that all of us are busy now trying to react these ideas with our disciplines to see how the ideas can travel within our own areas of specializations. The remarks we are trying to make are to the fact that because we started with the simple idea of using 3 tripods to support something, and therefore, what you use to put on top of them doesn't really matter. So if It doesn't matter the discipline you're resting on those three areas, the primary research domain, primary application domain, and the general cultural literacy, it will carry every discipline. So it's a universal system, more or less. It's transcendental. That's why it's so powerful to our view. And the business of this session is for you to reflect deeply now and later, especially after reading all the pre-readings we said, to start asking yourself, how can I change what I'm doing now in order to accommodate these new perspectives? How can I, empower my game in order to begin to achieve the Oselux vision, to enable my knowledge to create products and services, opportunities, wealth, enhancing the joy, peace, and happiness of individuals in society, and fast-tracking the socio-economic development of countries, my own country, and then any country I live in, and so on and so forth. How can I even publish better these ideas than is currently done traditionally? And there's a section on publishing, so that I don't have to go into that too much. So this is about a changing mindset. It's not completely, you're not throwing away anything that you're doing at the moment. You have to do those things strategically to earn more money by being promoted. Of course, I accept that. But you have to do far more than that if you really want to help, to enable, yourself and your country to grow. And that is the business of this session, of interactive discussions and applications of the idea to specific disciplines. I managed to give a few examples, but of course, I'm not a master of every discipline, so I will not be able to say more than that for now. Okay. But in the papers that we sent, you will see how I'm trying to apply it to economics, to statistics, and other things. And that can give you a clue how to get it going. Professor Odo works with me, has been developing the system with me. He has copious examples of how he uses it in real estate, which already is professional, but it's even making what he's doing even more professional, more impactful. So everybody can benefit from this. Thank you very much.